Welcome in, people of the world. Night Pitch Episode 3. I'm Justin Wick. He's Evan Johnson. Evan, we're getting right into business. Our last episode, we were talking about what it's like to be a pitcher as a reliever entering the game after an injury where you have the unlimited warm-up pitches time. So this got me thinking about the different delays that exist in baseball, whether it be travel-related or rain, field maintenance-related, fan-related. There's a lot of situations in the game of baseball where there's some occurrence that puts a halt to game action or even getting to the ballpark itself. So I want to talk about, first of all, a fish that a bird dropped onto a field in Lakeland, Florida.
What?
I was not here, but I heard about this.
What?
There was some minor league outfielder that I know. I heard this just sitting, some bystander. I don't even know who said this, but they were playing in the Florida Complex League. And there was like a pelican that picked up a fish out of the Gulf of Mexico. And it was flying over the field, and it accidentally dropped the fish on the center field.
What?
And so they delayed the game for 25 minutes. So this is why this whole topic came into mind, because I thought about where we were talking about and then what we were talking about here. So I want to turn this over to you, because I know that we just started this off with quite the bang, and we do not promote animal cruelty of that nature, but this is why we're talking about it, because there's some pretty obscure nonsense that exists in the game of baseball. So,
Okay,
Evan, what do you got for us? What's some delays?
Okay, well, don't just graze over the fish story for a second, because that's pretty rare. Like, at what point? What are the chances of them, the bird, dropping a fish in the outfield? First of all, and second of all, did they just go pick it up with their hands and just run off the field, the grounds crew, or what?
Well, so the story goes, I think it was on a backfield of a stadium. The tough part about this is I don't know the whole situation, and I had never met this person before. I just heard, I was sitting in a stadium seat working some game, and these people were sitting 2 rows behind me, and it was one of those that I was so fascinated by the story, but I didn't feel like it was my time or place to ask questions about it. So the logistic mystery, I'm sure we need this show to blow up for multiple reasons, but one of which is we need to learn the entire fish story.
Yeah, we need to find a source there that was there on that day.
I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they ended up, they had a bucket of water that was just, they filled it up, they picked up the fish, they put it in the water. I don't know what you do with the fish after the fact.
I'm surprised they put it in water.
I mean, I don't know if it was already kind of mangled from being in the bird's mouth or something.
I mean, doesn't it pierce it through with the talons when it picks it up? That thing's probably dead for sure. Also, it's dead if you put it in fresh water. That thing got picked up out of the Gulf. You throw it in some Killigan water jug.
I think it was more they just needed to do something, but so the story goes, there was a 20-minute delay, and I don't know what the situation was, but this is pretty much a Wild West type of situation, but this is how do you humanely? I got another one. I don't mean to just carve into my list right here, but when I was playing in the Northwoods League, another situation that I think this was on Foul Pole Sports and a couple other sites. So there was a fly ball in the infield that drilled a bird, and the bird fell to the ground before the ball did. And
not funny, but also kind of crazy.
I know. I don't like sharing all of these details because this is actually a really sad story. I'm not proud of this. But so anyways, this bird hits the ground and you just hear this 4-year-old girl yell, "They killed it!"
Oh no.
So I'm sitting in the dugout just mortified, going, "This is horrible." So anyways, this was the grounds crew brought the bucket very quietly. It was these are not fun stories to share. And I mean, this is part of the situation of any of these delays are not optimal, but I don't want to create this stigma that we're getting reported to the feds because we're talking about horrible things that happen to animals. I mean, if we need to share something more uplifting, the fish tank at Marlins Park is gone. That's also because a foul ball put a crack in it, and that could have been an issue. But long story short, we do not need this kind of malicious dialect. Evan, do you have one that's more innocent so we can get on a right track here?
Well, maybe not innocent, but it doesn't involve animals dying. But before I do that, quick sidebar. Whoever bought the Marlins when they first redesigned that stadium, just bad calls all around. Anyways, I'll just continue to go. on this other story. I was in, I don't know if I should say where I was. I was in the minor leagues, okay? And we're sitting there, and there's like not a lot of people at this game because not a lot of people go to this ballpark. And we just see this guy jump this low wall in the outfield, just start running around in the outfield, right? Just a streaker. He wasn't naked, but he was just running around.
just dude, there you go.
Keep in mind, this was like a weekday night game. There wasn't a lot of people there. So where he came from, there was nobody in the seats like around him because down the line was just empty. And he starts running around, and we're all watching him run around in the outfield, and we're kind of looking for security people, and there's just nobody. There's nobody coming to get him. So he's running, and there's nobody chasing him. This is a minor league game.
You didn't have security personnel, or were they actually? Was there security people there?
I mean,
to stop them?
There's like ushers, and there's cops at the gate, but I don't think their priority is to go chase down this dude running around in the outfield, especially when nobody's there. So we're all standing there.
The priority is not to keep the game from going on.
Yeah, they're like, I guess every usher was like, not my job. I don't know what to do about it. But anyways, we were in the bullpen, and we're just watching this guy just run around for way longer than what he should have, with nobody entering the field and all the players just staring at him. So I go and knock on this big garage door where the grounds crew hangs out during the game. They had couches and like TVs in there and stuff. And they opened the door and they slid it open, and I was like, hey, what do we do about this? This guy's just running around, and they're just kind of like half in and out, and they just look out there and they're like, I don't know, he'll stop. Like, so at that moment, the dude just like was stopped running because I guess he got tired and just like looked around and there was nobody chasing him. So he just walked over to the railing and just got back in the stands and just started walking down the concourse and went back to his seat.
Well, how long was he on the field for?
I would say maybe 3-4 minutes. I don't know. But he was just running around and nobody's chasing him. So if you're a streaker and you're in that moment and you're running around in the outfield and nobody's chasing you, is he just like, okay, well, I guess that was boring. Guess I'll just go back to my seat now. I don't know what happened to him after that, but he left the field just uninterrupted. I think it was so funny to watch him just stop and go, well, I guess I'm going off the field now because there's nothing else to do out here.
I mean, that's an interesting point as far as like the actual operational setup of how fields are configured. Like, I know there was a situation, there was a streaker in Oakland. This was just this past big league season, that it was before the game while the grounds crew was prepping the field. And maybe the security personnel it was like maybe early when the gates opened or something. They're finishing up BP, they're tearing down. But anyways, I remember hearing reports about there's videos of this streaker running across the infield, and the grounds crew is just kind of keeping their distance, keeping an eye on it, but they're not really stopping him. And I know that like this is the background of sometimes you need like a security guard, actual card, or you need a certification in order to restrain somebody that's like trespassing. So the legalities of this, I mean, from an event operation standpoint of, you would think that this is just a really simple thing of all it takes is one person to stop this, but like there's an actual complex procedure of, if you're like a credentialed employee of a team, the things that you can do and the things that you can't do. But I mean, at the same time, you would hope that there's at least one person that's qualified to stop this thing.
But what I learned from this experience is that there's two methods to getting somebody off the field. There's the one like you're saying, where there's a whole protocol. And then apparently, if you just don't acknowledge the guy, he'll just get bored and leave. That's what I learned.
In case there's ever any doubt, just give it 3 or 4 minutes and it's going to subside.
He'll just be like, all right, I guess I'll go back to my seat.
You know, it's the kind of situations like this that in the moment while you're sitting there watching it, like, I imagine it's not the most funny thing it's the thing when you look at it like in retrospect of this is absolutely hilarious, but like the kind of panic in the heat of the moment of how do we respond to this, especially if you're a player or if you're an umpire or like an on-field personnel of how do we get the fish out of the outfield? How do we get the streaker back into the stands? But I know there was another situation. This was when I was living in Arizona. I believe one of the complexes, it was like a complex league game in one of the stadiums, and they had just installed new LED lights, like the new. If you go to a big league venue, you'll see how sometimes mid-inning they'll do different light shows of it's not just the standard lights anymore. So anyways, they have a light show for any home run by the home team of like, I mean, it flashes all over and it does a big circle around the field, all the light towers, they're synced up stuff. So it's the first time they're trying this out. Brand new light towers, first game, tested it out. There's a home run that's hit. He's rounded first. They're fired up. They push the button and the light show starts, and it's incredible. They couldn't get it to stop for about 5 or 10 minutes. So everybody's going in the moment, damn, this is pretty cool. And then it turns into the umpires are just like, we can't do anything. And I think the funnier part about it is it wasn't like it was a packed stadium, and it was more ominous of nobody really knew. You kind of felt like you were alone with your thoughts in the moment because there wasn't any other person really around you in the direct vicinity other than, yep, they're still going right now. But those are the innocent ones too. So I had to offset this. I didn't want to say all the vulgar ones that involved decrepit people or
Dying
just
animals.
Absolutely devastated animals. Yeah, there we go. I know as far as like different travel situations of, I mean, the delayed bus trips, I can think of a friend of mine that he was in the Brewers organization and he was talking about, this was probably 10 or 15 years ago, maybe a little bit more now. And it was, they were in Montana playing a rookie ball game and they had to drive from Montana back to Ogden, Utah. And they had an off day in between. And it was the coach's idea that they wanted to go to Yellowstone because, yeah, you're driving right through. Well, none of the players really wanted to go to Yellowstone. So they're driving back through on their off day, taking their time. I mean, yeah, it'd be beautiful. I'd be interested in seeing it. But so they stop at like the Old Faithful Geyser or something, or they go to Yellowstone Falls, whatever. And the coaches are the only ones getting off the bus. And all the players are staying on it, just burning their off day, just delaying it. It's just brutal. You get the opportunity, at least go check it out. So I know that one's actually kind of sad, but do you have any like pertaining to actual travel of, I mean, you played in Thunder Bay, Canada, which means you had like some border crossing situations. Of course, the minor league slate of, I mean, you were there even before like the restructure into the 6-game series. Do you have any that pertain to like the actual travel schedule?
Oh, I forgot about that. There, yeah, the border was interesting because the first couple times we would go through, it was like, okay, get out of the bus. We're going to check under the bus. We're going to check in your bags and like all that stuff because you can't bring food, you know, different kinds of meats over. You can't bring that kind of stuff. Well, after a while, they just kind of stopped checking the bus, you know? And
I mean, they know who you are. Yeah.
So for people who aren't familiar, you know, you can't bring like unregistered like pets or animals like across the border. Well, these guys, when we stopped to get food, got food, and then we had extra time, so they went into PetSmart and they bought a dwarf hamster, which we're going to continue with the animals, I guess, for delays. But they bought a dwarf hamster, and it's like, if you don't know, they're like just that big. They're like maybe 3-4 inches long, and they got it a little tiny like habitat it could live in with a wheel. They bought a bunch of food because he wanted a dwarf hamster for a pet. Well, this was like middle of the season, so they weren't checking. So eventually we got the dwarf hamster over the border into Canada without them knowing, right? It's just dwarf hamster pet. I'm not sure if that's going to get me in any trouble, but just, hey, Border Patrol, I had nothing to do with it.
You didn't know about it. You only knew until you crossed the border. Yeah, you didn't know until you got into Canada.
Yeah, I didn't know. You know, sorry, Mounties, and everybody involved in that. But anyways, we had him in the locker room, and we had his habitat thing and his food in the locker room, and he was living in there. Well, we come back from another road trip, and we asked the clubby to take care of, I don't remember the name, of the dwarf hamster.
Shout out to Thunder Bay Clubby, though, by the way. That's one of the best ones in the league.
Yeah, nicknamed Bulldog. So Anyways, we come back from the road trip, and he's not in the cage. So we start asking the clubby where the heck the dwarf hamster is. And there's one couch in the locker room. And, like, one of my buddies is sitting on the couch. This is, like, a couple hours after we realized we couldn't find the hamster. And he's like, dude, I think he's in the couch. Because he felt him, like, crawling around in the couch. So now I don't know if he's still there. But that dwarf hamster for the rest of the season lived in the couch. There's a little hole in the back, like this big. He would get out and go get food and then go back and live in the couch. So for the rest of the season.
Did you see it run out? Like, did you confirm that it actually was in there?
Well, we confirmed that he was in there by feeling him, like, crawling around in the couch. And, you could hear him, like, squeaking in there and running around. I mean, it could have been a mouse, but we were pretty sure it was the hamster because he got out of his cage and was living in the couch. So he upgraded his little venue to something much bigger, and then he could just get all the food he wanted off the floor. So he was good. He was our pet hamster that nobody ever got to see because he was hiding in the couch every time we're in the locker room.
I mean, all things considered, that's a pretty decent place to be living if you're a hamster like that. I mean, if
that's
I
a big house.
I know that's not the most. Yeah, I mean, and the food that probably falls through the cracks right there, like you're getting taken care of. Jeez. I mean, I know like the in-game delays are some crazy kind of. There's always interesting to see how unrelated some of these different parallels can be. But I think as far as, I mean, the fun ones are when I shouldn't say fun ones, but when it interrupts the actual preparation of a particular player. And this is one, like, I was a very routine-based starting pitcher of, like, when I was in high school, I remember showing up to games to watch Clayton Kershaw's full warm-up of, I had my phone notes out, taking notes on the stretches that he did and everything there. And I wanted to emulate that because, a Hall of Famer does that. I want to follow in his footsteps, sure. But to see, like, the different complexities, I remember I got to junior college, and my coach was trying to get me to break these particular habits. And I mean, talking about delays and certain issues like this of during fall scrimmages, once he caught on to how routine-driven I was, he started, like, telling me to go fill up the water when I was, like, doing my stretches in right field or something like this. And it's like, I couldn't tell him no, because I'm sitting here like, okay, all right. But, I mean, I think about the adaptability that goes into this and seeing just the uncharacteristic parallels of how far it can throw off your own preparation just based on, I mean, again, it's a context of how do you frame this? So do you look at this as it's just a setback that it is what it is, I can't do anything about it? But when you are told to control what you can control, and then a fish gets dropped by a bird into the outfield.
Yeah.
Like, I know I was in junior college and there was a situation. For some reason in Arizona, during the spring, there's bees, like big swarms of bees will come through. I know there's a video. I think the Rockies were playing the Padres in Peoria. That's your spring complex with the Mariners. There's a game and there's a video of it like in the 8th inning of it. This was like 5 years ago. And every infielder is laying on the ground. Just there's bees that are flying through. And it's just, if you're standing up, you're more exposed to the bees. But I remember playing JUCO ball. We played at Scottsdale Community College. And during batting practice, we heard them cut the music off, get onto the microphone, everybody get on the ground. And here it is, mid-BP, we have baseballs all over the outfield, and everybody's just laying there for probably 2 or 3 minutes, and then we stood back up again. There was another that we're playing at Cochise College, another JUCO, and their team took the field for the top of the first inning of a doubleheader. Their pitcher threw full warm-ups, and then they discovered a beehive in left center field. I don't know how it got in the actual field itself, but all of a sudden we see some maintenance worker take a golf cart out there and a shovel. We had probably a 25-minute delay, and this was after the starting pitcher was like ready to throw the first pitch of the game. So those are some of the juicy ones. I don't want to talk about too much animal slander because I don't want people to think that we're just bad influences here. But is there any situation that's? Oh, go ahead.
It's seeming like a lot of our delays involve animals. Which is strange. But those are the ones I typically remember.
like the black cat at Wrigley Field. There's been squirrels. I mean, it's fun when TV broadcasts catch up on that one too. Like when you see the squirrel running across the field, and then you're watching on TV as like all the eyes are. I was growing up in Colorado. There was a Rockies game where there's a squirrel running across right center, and I'm trying to figure out why everybody in the place is cheering. And then all of a sudden, the squirrel gets up on the outfield fence, and everybody starts just losing their damn minds. Oh, jeez. Well, no, I don't want to get too carried away with it. Is there a delay that comes to mind with you that like impacted your own personal performance?
I don't think so. I mean, rain sucks. I mean, everybody's been through, either delays on the field like weather, or they've been through delays in travel like a bus breakdown. Everybody's been through like a bus breakdown where you're sitting there waiting forever. But I do remember pitching in a lot of crappy scenarios where it would start to rain while somebody else was pitching, and then I would pitch after the delay. And I remember there's a couple times in the minors where I did this, where somebody else's pitching started dumping, we had a delay, I pitched afterwards, and we were in Tri-Cities, and the bullpen mound was completely soaking wet. You couldn't throw on it at all. So but they let me do my warm-ups on the game mound, but nobody covered it during the rain thing, so it was soaked.
Oh.
But I was going to do the warm-ups on the game mound before I went in, and I was watching them do the game mound, and they were just botching it completely. So I walked out there with my glove and the ball that I was supposed to warm up with, and I started grabbing bags of the quick dry at the rakes. And I was doing the mound with them before I got on the mound to warm up. So impacting my preparation, for sure. I prepared the mound after the rain delay before I started the next inning.
I mean, that's a good way to instill accountability into somebody else, though. Like, if you're a grounds crew worker and you just say, yeah, I'm doing this, and then all of a sudden you have a player come out saying, no, we are taking care of this. Yeah. Well, then, I mean, the funny side of it, too, like you being, I mean, in Tri-City, and that was when you were with Everett, this would have been you as a visiting player going out to help the home grounds crew. Oh, good grief.
But man. I can think of a delay that you weren't necessarily playing, and it was one of the best stories I've ever heard, because you were working at this ballpark at the time, and I would love to hear that story again. And it was the one where the foul ball had hit the lady in the stands.
Oh, this is okay, yeah.
The coincidence.
Well, this wasn't necessarily.
It's not great that it hit her, and she was fine, but the weird coincidence of this whole story is nuts. And I want to hear you tell that story again, because that story was hilarious. One in a million.
All right, well, I'm going to say this under complete anonymity. I'm not going to disclose what venue or what team or what it was, just because this could have happened when I was in high school. This could have happened yesterday. So just to protect the employers here. This was a decent sized stadium with a good amount of stadium seats. There's an amateur game that's taking place that I'm working this particular event, and people are coming through the gates. Well, there's a blind lady that gets out of an Uber. And all right, I mean, good for all senses. I mean, even if you can't see the game, I mean, I get it, hanging out at the ballpark. So anyways, she gets to the game, and an usher walks her in to the ballpark, and she's looking to take a look around, and she's legally blind, but she can make out kind of the dimensions of the field. So she kind of peeks out and she's like, is that third base out there? Yeah, it is. So the usher helps her into a seat. Now, she came by herself, which I feel horrible sharing this because it's just kind of sad, honestly.
It's a one in a million story, though.
She came by herself. She is seated in the middle of a section, and there's probably nobody within 75 feet of her. Maybe 100 feet of her.
You said nobody within the section. There's nobody in this, even in the section.
There's nobody in her section. There's nobody in the sections next to her or behind her. She's just in the minutes. It is what it is. So, given the cards that are currently on the table for this story, I'm sure that people could fill in the gaps of what inevitably happens. There's just a little tink foul ball. I'm talking with the police officer at the time. Just we're overseeing the field, whatever. You see this thing go up and over the netting, and the cop is just like, "That's gonna hit her, isn't it?" And it just continues to go, and it hits her directly in the sternum. It's just so sad. So this turns into, I mean, she was okay. Like, I do want to disclose this. There was no significant issues. Like, everything's fine. I know I haven't shared where this happened, what happened, any names or anything like this, but she is okay. So it's just, it was devastating too, because then the usher is talking about, well, I hope it wasn't the one that I helped to her seat, and then the usher felt terrible about this. So I feel so sad sharing this, and I mean it's just unbelievably somber, and I mean it was so innocent, and I mean talking with her, everything was okay, and she wasn't high spirits over this, so no long-term issues came out of it. I want to just completely clear the air. This was not like, there was no long-term effects. Everything is okay, but it's one of these, like, the fact that everything had to line up for this, and the fact that it actually happened is just an absolute miracle. Just an absolute shock that all these things could come together. But it's sad, man.
I just can't imagine
sad one.
I can't imagine sitting there and not being able to see, and then just getting hit with the ball. And second thing, she's the only one in that whole area in the middle of a large like stadium section, and it hits you right here. Of all the places it could have gone within like 100 feet of that area, it went right here. The lady who couldn't see.
It's just so sad, man.
And then as you're leaving,
she was.
The usher asked you, "Oh, I hope it wasn't that blind lady sitting in the section." It was. How do you know?
I was so sad. Well, and I mean, I was thrilled that she was in such high spirits over it. And just for the record, it wasn't like a towering big league fly ball. Like, I mean, it was just one that barely cleared the net. So, I mean, just to paint the picture, this was not like, I mean, any impact like that is not going to feel great, but like it could have been worse. It's sad to say it could have been worse. It was already just so devastating. But I was on the other side of the field watching it. Like, I was on the first base side, and it wasn't like I could run over there and try to deflect it. Because if I was behind the section, I would have knowing what was going on. But the hard part about this, I didn't know she was blind at the time. Like, I was just going, like, I didn't really comprehend how it just, because she looked like she was kind of paying attention. I don't like talking about this. This is so sad.
She's just sitting there looking at the field like this, and a ball's coming right here. You're like, do you see that? Like, get out of the way.
It's just brutal. You know, you never know what you're going to run into. It's just absolute devastating. And I mean, the fun ones are the ones that keep people off balance that you can look back on, like, kind of with a joyous smile. This one is not joyous at all. It's just sad. So I like the ones of you talking about, yeah, you're instilling like positivity and yeah, let's get this mound taken care of. Rather than the ones that are just absolute damage control because you're in the middle of taking care of it. And you're just so sad about it. But
I feel
it
like
makes you
just because of odds. That's one of the best stories of a delay in a game where you have like a minor little delay where everybody's like, oh, what are the chances?
Oh my goodness. You know? I mean, fortunately, we were able to take care of the situation. So, I mean, it's one of those. It's one of those things, man. This game is just weird. And I think in baseball, too, like, I don't know if appreciate is the right word, but in retrospect of you have an opportunity to actually witness these moments and let the moment kind of simmer a little bit as opposed to a basketball arena where it's such moving back and forth on the court like this. But it's just, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to unpack, man.
Yeah, I think delays, or whether it's travel or in the game, honestly, a lot of times they're just kind of fun. Because it's just
for
random.
The most part, yeah.
It's just random, you know? There's anything, you play long enough, there's going to be some weird thing that happens in a delay. Some kind of weird delay, like a streaker that doesn't, like, just kind of gets bored.
Worn out.
A bird dropping a fish, cats, squirrels.
We're going to need to come back and talk about something serious when we come back from an intermission here, because I don't want people to think we're just talking about complete nonsense.
Well, we might need
Good
to.
stuff,
we might
man.
not. You never know. Never know what
we
I'll
never
bring
know
to the
where it's
table.
going to take us, man. We are going to take a delay of our own set, I guess. Nice little lead-in, huh? Yeah, we're talking about delays, and now we're going to take our little intermission delay. We're going to come back. We don't know what we're going to talk about in the second section. We usually have a pretty good comprehensive set of notes, but Evan and I just decided we're going to see where this episode takes us. So we're going to take a few moments. Stick around, don't go anywhere. This is the Night Pitch Episode 3. We will be right back.
I need love to keep me feeling low.
Hello, friends. ISO. It is called either that or ISO, whichever one you think is cooler. ISO stands for Isolated Power. It is essentially a variation of slugging percentage, but it completely removes singles. A player that goes 4 for 5 with 3 singles and a home run would have an identical ISO to somebody that went 1 for 5 with a homer. These are completely different performances. Slugging percentage would be different, but ISO is the same for both performances. On the right, we see that ISO doesn't include anything for singles, while slugging percentage factors in any total base. The reason ISO has value is because it throws out potentially weak singles. For the most part, any extra base hit is earned through some solid contact. ISO makes that adjustment for us. In today's game, the league average ISO sits around 160 to 170. This number has seen a general increase over the past 100 years at the big league level, and this shows how power hitting is more established in the modern game. In 2022, we saw Aaron Judge of the New York Yankees lead all categories on the batting slash except for batting average. That lead belonged to Luis Arraez of the Miami Marlins, and as you can see, both players have extremely different ISO numbers. Both had great years. Arraez is just a different kind of hitter. We can find that out with the use of one single number. For casual analysis, ISO is great because it's simple. It might not be as in-depth like weighted on-base average, but the simplicity is helpful for ideas that can then lead to some more sophisticated analysis. When it comes to player evaluation, ISO is just one small piece of the puzzle, but it can lead to some game-changing moments.
Is you.
Welcome back, my friends. We are here at episode 3, post-intermission, just hanging out, having a good time once again. Evan and I are brainstorming what direction we're looking to go with the show. We've got plenty of juicy topics coming your way, and it's always cool. We were talking about the dynamic of what this show has taken about. We've discussed a lot of the funny points of the game, a lot of the things to keep it loose, and it always seems to turn into a more serious discussion as far as our goal with this show. And we were actually just talking about this during the break. I don't want to get too into the weeds about how we structure this, but the whole premise of what we wanted to do with the Night Pitch is we didn't want to keep this too formal, and we didn't want to keep it too casual, but at the same time, the reason that we really wanted to do this together is because the more organic topics are the things that just flow, the things that just get spoken into existence, and we wanted this to be more of an authentic operation rather than something that looked so forced. We felt like the best work was going to be a true conversation. So I say all of that to lead into, we literally just picked this topic about 20 seconds ago. So here we go. The topic is, what do you bring with you to the field? What is in your bag? What is in your bucket? What is in your duffel bag? What is in your roller case? What do you carry with you? So for those of you that were familiar in episode 2, I mentioned the seat that I had. I keep forgetting I have Driveline wrist weights in here. Dude. This thing is, goodness. This was my bag. I'll just kind of carry through. This thing is, I wish you guys had, it's at such a weird angle because I don't want to come off the camera to pick it up. All right, there we go. Anyways, what I would do as a player, I would bring a backpack, which I would keep a lot of my clothes in. I would bring a duffel bag, which I had one of those cool glove boxes. I bought that for me when I graduated high school. And then, I'd keep my cleats in the duffel bag. And then I had the bucket, the Home Depot bucket, that I would load up with the plyos. I'd put some different resistance bands in there. I would put more of the equipment-based things that I would need. And then I had a PVC pipe that I put a whole bunch of stickers on, and I put a shoulder tube inside the PVC pipe. So those were the 4 things that I carried with me to the field. Looking back on it, did I need all of those things? Absolutely not. I think about, there are a lot of pitchers that will just like bring a pair of cleats and a glove and call it good. So I look at me turned into the human yard sale. But Evan, I know that you've had, I mean, certainly have you progressed your routine and have developed familiarities and even potentially being able to share equipment with teammates. What are some of, I guess, first of all, how do you carry everything with you into the ballpark?
Well, a bucket is definitely commitment. I have not seen a lot of people bring a bucket and a giant shoulder tube thing. So I remember coming to the bullpen with all that on a furniture dolly. That was something to see. But as I've played, the amount of stuff that I bring to the bullpen has less to do with pitching and more to do with time management and, being comfortable. I think my core things that I would bring to the bullpen for pitching would be, like 2 or 3 plyos, maybe not even any, because a lot of people have them, so you can just use theirs. So if you don't want a heavy bag, just don't bring it. My glove, rosin bag, a hacky sack.
There you go.
And I'm putting this on the list of pitching related because a hacky sack is a great way to warm up your hips before you go in the game. Do you know you're going to pitch like the 6th or the 7th inning? Start playing hacky sack by yourself in like the 4th or the 5th. You'll be loose. Your legs
activation-wise, honestly, because that's not just like a static frog hold. Like, that's an actual activation type of hold if you're doing that right there.
Right. It's like functional range control. You got to get in limited range of your hips and also be able to control them. So hacky sack is definitely on that list. And then a bunch of snacks, phone. I do bring my phone to the bullpen. If younger players, you never heard me say that. I do bring my phone to the bullpen. But you're an adult playing baseball. You can keep it in your bag. You can have self-control. But sometimes when the phone doesn't work or the walkie-talkie's dead, we need to use our phones to call into the dugout. So you always got to have your phone with you just in case somebody needs it.
But, that's a good point. I mean, talking about the maturity angle of this too, and I think that some people kind of twist it in a different context of, well, you could go to the bathroom in the clubhouse and you could take a look at your phone in your locker. It's not so much the placement of where it actually is rather than the actual act of what do you do with it. I mean, that's interesting that you mentioned that. When I was in high school, I had a timer on my phone and I timed out my warm-up of, this is how long I want to do my static stretches, my dynamic warm-up. This is how long I have for my bands. And it was more because I didn't want to get off of schedule because I wanted to commit those 7 minutes before the game of me just hanging out, getting rest before I would go into the game itself. So I remember I had a coach that got upset with me for, I had my water bottle, my towel, and my phone, and I'm holding this. And they're saying, why do you have your phone out here? And little did they know that I was just psychotic preparation minded, and I should have just gone to Walmart and bought like a timer to avoid this. But at the same time, knowing that you have the good intentions, it's not like there's any malicious intent behind this. So, I mean, that's actually a really good point as far as, it's not so much what you do have with you, but rather what you're doing with it. I completely agree.
Yeah, and as I've played a little longer, the amount of items in my bag has gone way down. I used to bring a ton of stuff to the bullpen to prepare to throw, but over time it just became more exhausting to do that than it was actually helping me prepare. And a lot of my teammates had that stuff, and they'd bring it down. So I would just bring a light bag, and then, hey, can I use your wrist weights, Justin? Sure. Yeah. And at the end of the day, I walk out with my light bag, and Wicks walks out with his furniture dolly.
I know, I don't encourage myself. I wish I had a photo of me carrying all of this, and I didn't actually want to admit this, but when I started working in baseball, my playing career is essentially finished up at that point, but I still had that itch to throw. And me living in Arizona at the time, the men's leagues played at the spring training facilities. So I knew only one way how to get prepared for games, which was turning into 2 men in a truck pulling up to this men's league game. But I think it's interesting, and this is something as far as, overcomplicating the warm-up. This is very against my own ways throughout the majority of my career, but I can remember when I had Tommy John surgery, I wouldn't say that I ever slacked before. I really prioritized arm care for everything that I thought. I know that kind of sounds against it if you needed surgery, but I mean, I can effectively say, I had spreadsheets of what I did, how I wanted to document my, but then I started wondering if injury could potentially be facilitated because of going over the top, doing so much more than maybe otherwise you need to. And I think of, days that I felt exhausted at the ballpark. My rationale was sometimes do your normal warm up and you'll fall into your routine and you'll be ready to go, as opposed to now that I look back on it, I think that because I was so focused on not leaving anything to chance, the one variable, which was just simple feel, was just completely kind of disregarded because I was just so structured in the ways that I wanted to go about this. So, I mean, I know, and I still have my bucket. I haven't really pitched like competitively in months now, and I still have this bucket underneath my desk just because it feels weird not to have it next to me. That sounds really messed up, I guess.
No, but you can't get rid of it. I remember.
Yeah.
You go around the bullpen and people, if you went up around the bullpen and looked through everybody's bags, there'd be a couple things that are the same, but everybody's going to bring different stuff. There's some people that brought a lot of stuff because they wanted to warm up that way. But then there's some people who just brought a speaker and snacks. All they needed was a little bit, just some tunes to get them going, and they'd set the little portable speaker on the back of the mound in the bullpen and whatever. There was a guy I knew, his name was Jack Anderson, and he threw submarine, like really low to the ground by the dirt, and his pregame routine turned into more of a ritual, like what you're talking about, Justin, is having this plan of how to get prepared in like evidence-based ways. As you start to play longer, especially Jack Anderson was older and he had been playing for a while, and his routine turned into more so like a ritual where all he needed was a Red Bull, juicy fruit, and his glove, and that was it. So when Jack would warm up on the mound, he would put the Red Bull, they'd call him down to warm up, he'd open the Red Bull, he'd sit it on the mound, on the rubber, and then open up the juicy fruit, pull a tab out, put it in his mouth, and then put the juicy fruit on the rubber next to the Red Bull. And he would throw with the juicy fruit in the rubber, or juicy fruit in the Red Bull sitting on the rubber. And is that, that's not anything that's through evidence is going to help him, but he did that every single time. Juicy fruit, Red Bull. And it kind of evolves to that more like spiritual kind of
like the
routine.
creature.
Yeah.
That's just incredible to see. Well, I mean, it's funny because, I mean, it develops like almost a part of your identity I can remember I posted a photo on Instagram of just me growing up in Colorado. I had a field that I would go to that was kind of it was an empty kind of turf field plot up on a hill that overlooked the city. I loved going up there. But anyways, it's gorgeous. I posted a photo. I'll actually put it down here. I'll put it on the bottom. This is my secret throwing spot in Denver. Evan, you and I can't see that because we don't actually have it, but trust that anybody video watching, it'll be on there. Anyways, you can see the actual shoulder tube that I use, the PVC pipe. And then I had people comment on the photo talking about the PVC pipe is still there. And it dawned on me, like, my actual identity was starting to be mapped in the things that I was bringing with me to the field. But you mentioned exactly right, the juicy fruit and the Red Bull, it starts to become almost a part of your persona. And especially when you see it multiple times and it becomes just a constant part of, maybe it's not discussed all the time, but it's just always present and it's always there. It's amazing to see where your identity really begins to get shaped as a baseball player just based on those things in and of itself. And that's funny. You mentioned the ritual side of things. Jose Valverde, when he was with the Detroit Tigers, he would I saw this on Sunday Night Baseball live one time. He threw his last warm-up pitch in the bullpen. He took a sip of water. Then he walks down the tunnel nice and slow, like down the ramp, out the bullpen gate, stops at the edge of the gate. He still has the water in his mouth. So he turns to his left, spits out a third, spits out a right to the third, and spits out the final 1/3, and then ran into the field. So, I mean, I think of these things, and of course you see that, and instinctively that's the way that it gets based upon. But, I do have my bucket right next to me, and I guess that I can kind of, this is what my persona is. You got a towel?
Yeah,
this is going to take a long time. I have a lot of stuff in here. I've got miscellaneous plios just hanging out. I put a couple on the backdrop here just because I needed to have a good look. This glove would be in the duffel. I've got the forbidden fruit here.
Oh,
this was
boy.
2020 era. Oh, dear.
Oh, boy.
I just grabbed it. I didn't even look at it. This is when I was a hitter, all right? Listen, I didn't dwell on this. All right, it says pitch design, do not touch. All right, this was for Rapsodo. just because I wanted to see what effects would happen.
Do not touch.
All right, listen, if I was actively going to cheat, I would have used Spider Tack. I wouldn't have used this, and you can't use it anymore anyway, so we're going to move.
That cracks me up.
I didn't use it for many games, all right, but everybody was using it when I did, so.
Floss
I got
band.
the Voodoo Floss, the Floss Band.
Mhm.
I've heard if you take a car inner tube, that can be a good alternative too. I got the Modus sleeve. There we go.
Modus.
I think I'm the only person that personally bought a Modus sleeve that was not club affiliated.
I haven't seen a lot of people with
Got the
Modus.
sunglasses kit. Yeah, there you go. We got the Lena Blackburn rubbing mud. If you want to rub your own baseballs, this is the big league official stuff. I got a yoga strap. I didn't mean to turn this into show and tell, Evan. I kind of feel like a clown. Then we got 2 of these wrist weights. You know, this was a good idea on paper, and then I realized that I'd have to put all this back. All right, you mentioned I had the furniture dolly set up. So this is what I would do for games, and I don't encourage anybody to actually do this because this is kind of cynical looking back on it. But all right, so I had my backpack full of clothes. I put maybe my uniform accessories in there. The jersey's washed for you. I've got my backpack full of clothes, what I'm going to wear post-game. I've got my cleats and my glove in a duffel bag. I've got the shoulder tube pipe in one hand, and I've got this furniture dolly cart with a bucket on it and a mini trampoline, one of the Driveline mini trampolines on top of it. So that was what I would carry into the field. And looking back on this, I think about the strain of getting out of my car and loading all of this and then carrying it out. Like, I thought it was kind of a badge of honor because I'm going, yeah, I'm leaving nothing to chance. I'm doing everything the way it's supposed to be done. But then seeing that I was becoming more bogged down of all of a sudden, you're supposed to be joyous to throw. Well, I was thinking of it going, I needed to unpack my entire garage before I even picked up a baseball. So I think the angle of the psychological component of how excited are you to warm up versus how excited are you to have to move half of your bedroom out by the time that you get to actually grab a baseball. I don't necessarily think I recommend anything on this. Looking back on it, it gives me good closure for my baseball career, but I guess I'm also going to have to pack all of this up now. Just see.
But as you can see, there's Wix Extreme, and then there's the other extreme of need a tiny little 8.5 ounce Red Bull and a thing of juicy fruit. I don't know. I couldn't say which one's better. It's whatever gives you the confidence to go out there and do your best. I'll give you another example. There's this person I played with. I'm not going to say his name, but he brought down. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Kramer Red Hot. It's like icy hot, but very, very strong.
Extreme.
Yes.
But red hot.
Yes. Like you put a rubber glove on to put this stuff on your hands and rub it on your shoulder, right?
I think I see where this is going. Oh, boy.
Well, it didn't matter if he didn't throw any pitches on the mound. They called down and said, hey, you got next batter. And it's, the guy fouls one, for the first pitch, and the at-bat's looking to be pretty short. He would go over and take that rubber glove and put Red Hot on it and right down in there. Right in between his legs. Exactly where you think it would be going. And that was all he needed to do. He didn't need he would skip sometimes being able to throw more pitches on the mound just to do that. And it was like we knew it too as a group. So when he was rushed, everybody's like, "Where's the Red Hot? We got to help him out." And not in the way that you're thinking. But we would make sure it was on the bench for him with the rubber glove sitting there, and then he did the rest. So it'd be like, "Has anybody got a rubber glove?" If he didn't have one. So then we'd all be looking around trying to find something, like a plastic bag or a rubber glove.
Like a leaf?
Yeah, just anything that he could just get it. So, yeah, that's another extreme. Right?
Oh, my goodness. I'm happy that you disclosed that, not the way that you think we helped him out. I'm glad that you added that one.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Whenever he was warming up, it was like everybody in the bullpen's like, "Oh gosh, we gotta find his Red Hot. We gotta find this thing because that's what he needs to get ready, and that's his ritual. That's exactly how he feels the most comfortable. Not sure how you feel very comfortable, with that ritual, but for him, that made him feel the most comfortable to go out there and perform. So
Yeah, and you know that's funny you mentioned that too. I know, especially seeing this more in the college ranks, but pitchers would. I've seen plenty of people that made a habit out of taking 2 scoops of pre-workout and putting it in just a little bit of water and just pounding it before they even step on the mound to throw their warm-up pitches. And I think of, you know, myself, I wanted to have the touch and feel in large part because of my arm slot and my arm action. I felt like if I got too amped up, I was going to rush and I was going to get out in front of my body and just if I felt jittery, I didn't feel like I'd be able to get my weight in the right place to rotate. But I think of, you know, optimizing what it is of your actual warm-up routine of what do you need to do in order to feel like you're throwing at your best. And I know I remember watching this when I was like 18 years old. It was, I don't even remember what video this was, but it was talking about the concept of throwing to warm up versus warming up to throw. And I remember I took it to heart because I felt like that was a very professional mindset of you warm up to throw. Of yes, you're going to ease into your first couple throws and you're not going to be throwing missiles out of the chute no matter what. But it's not you get to the field, you play catch to get ready, and then you're ready. It's no, you do a warm up and then your throwing is part of a very structured regimen. So I remember taking that to heart and then looking on the other side of is there a line? Which this is coming from the guy that had furniture dolly in his car carrying all this stuff to the ballpark. So I understand, you know, in retrospect, I think this is something that you can really look back at and try to optimize it. But something that, you know, I don't consider this a regret of mine because I would rather go over the top rather than not do enough. But part of me wonders if there were select outings that maybe I would have pitched better if I wasn't so routine dependent. Because in large part, sometimes all you need is just to take a deep breath and realize this is what you've trained to do. Maybe it wasn't everything leading up to what you wanted, but the variance of, you know, how we leaded this first episode talking about the delays that exist. Well, not everything is going to work the way that you want it to. Sometimes you're not going to have a plyo wall that's going to be ideal. Sometimes you're going to be rushed. Sometimes you're going to get hot. You haven't even put your rubber glove on or something like this. But, you know, I think of interrupting routines, and I don't want to just kind of keep leaning on the cliches of how do you handle adversity, because I mean that's, of course, how do you navigate it? Well, you put yourself in the right headspace, but I think of the most essential part, and I think probably more in a developmental sense, is there, if you could only do one part of a warm-up, like let's say you had 10 minutes to throw, and that's how much you're able to, or 10 minutes to warm up before you throw. If you only had it, actually, let's go 5. So let's create more urgency. If you only had 5 minutes to get ready to throw, what would you do and what would you kind of think the general public would do?
I would get on the mound right away. I mean, the best
There's no bands or anything?
Nope. The best version of, if I had to, and I'm taking this as like in a game, you have the next batter. What are you going to do? Or,
yeah,
like, you know, this might be his last batter. We might do one more. You got to get going, right? No pitch, pre-pitch clock. So you can buy some time to do some round visits and whatever. The first thing I'm doing is grabbing a baseball and getting on the mound and throwing to a catcher. And that's just me personally. I felt that if I had too structured of a ritual or too structured of a routine, let's say, that was not going to benefit me in the future. So my intention with my routine and my pre-pitch rituals are that I don't have one.
Yeah.
Which sounds crazy. I mean, if I have time to warm up, I might do some plyos. You know, I might do some bands. I might throw a 4-ounce off the mound. Something like that. But it depends on, you know, how much time I have and what I want to do and what I feel like. And I felt that having an adaptable routine like that and not having something that I felt like I needed to do was an advantage. So that was the purpose of my routine, was to not have one. And I'm not talking about practice and playing catch, like pregame, you know, at 3:00, where I did have a routine there, what I wanted to work on that day, all that. But when it came time to pitch in a game and you were in the bullpen, I did not have any kind of ritual or set routine or anything I felt like I needed to do.
I think that's a good criteria to kind of disclose of when you get to the park pre-batting practice and throw versus the actual in-game getting ready to go. And that's a different layer of, I wish that the ballpark gates for big league stadiums had the opportunity to open earlier so teams could see the actual, or so fans could actually watch the throwing of relief pitchers and of starting pitchers going into it. I do know as far as rushing into, if you have the next hitter, I think of, as much stuff as I carried to the ballpark. When that phone rang and my name was called, I would immediately grab the baseball depending on the urgency. I can think of a couple select occasions. I would take the green plyo and I would do, this is the blue one. Goodness, it looked green. All right, just assume that one was green. I would take the green plyo and I would do like reverse throws and I would just kind of rotate my body, maybe do some holds. Maybe I would throw it just to get a feel for it. So if I had an opportunity to kind of get an idea of this, but I think this is kind of the luxury of being a closer too, of if you're the ninth inning guy, you can build of this is what I do in the sixth, this is what I do in the seventh. You can continue to push towards this as opposed to if you're the fireman. And I think this is part of, I don't want to kind of fork off into a different discussion, but sometimes I wonder if the more predictable routines of closers, I understand that's an earned right to be the closer to begin with, but if you're there, that means that you have the most predictable routine as a pitcher outside of the starting rotation. And it's always fascinating to see, especially when you look at statistical volatility of what exists with, when you see big time reliever contracts, it's just by nature a very unpredictable flow of, historically speaking, if you look at big league progression, that's probably the most volatile position there is in the big leagues just by the nature of what it demands. But, at the same time, then I look back on going, all right, so you're trying to take away the variance, which means you're trying to take control of so many things. But when you do take control of it, you potentially burn yourself out. You potentially just throw your back out, pulling everything out of your car while you're showing up to the ballpark.
You don't train to deal with variance.
Sure.
If you give yourself the opportunity to deal with variance every day, then you're going to be good at dealing with all the other stuff that comes
That's a great point. Sure.
And on the thing that you said about closers and how they have likely the most set routine of anybody on the staff, it's because they know when, they're likely going to pitch, but more than anybody else. And that's kind of preferential treatment to the closers and the setup guy and the people that know what their role is. But it works the same as any other job, right? Like if you're a kid in college right now and you're like, how come I always have to warm up, in a split second, but so-and-so, he gets to know, a long time before he gets to pitch. Well, it's because he gets preferential treatment because he's pitching better. It's the same thing as the workforce. If you're the better worker, you're going to get preferential treatment.
Sure.
Right? It's just the way that competition works. If you sit there and complain about how you have no time, and I don't mean to ramble on this, but that's just the first thing I thought of, is if you're in that good spot, you don't have to worry about, coming in and pitching out of a rain delay. That year, that was my role. That's why I'm fixing the mound before I get on it to throw. What am I going to do about it?
Of course.
Right? So I was like, okay, I don't need a set routine. I don't need to come out of the bullpen and, spit water 3 ways and make sure that it's right. But the nice thing about that routine is that you can do it whatever role you're in. All you need is a cup of water. So that's how you know that dude's been playing for a long time.
That's a good point as far as being able to make sure your routines are adaptable no matter what gets thrown into. And you bring up another good side of, trying to figure out what your role is as far as, if you're a AAA closer that gets called up to the big leagues, you're probably not going to take over the big league closer role right away. So just seeing the nature of, even if you're throwing really well, that doesn't mean that you're going to continue to have the role that you currently have just because the nature of the progression. So I think this is an important point within the game of baseball, too, when you compare it to other sports. I get that they have the G League and the NBA, and yes, there are other minor league. Hockey has something like that as well. But when you look, especially comparing amateur baseball to professional baseball, if you're on a pro roster, that doesn't mean you're going to be on that roster in a week or two. You could be called up, you could be sent down, you could be sent to an indie ball roster, you could be all over the place. Whereas if you are locked into, let's say you're at an NCAA program, opening day to the final day of the season, you're either playing with that one team or you're not playing with that team. So I think that the adaptability, and that's a big adjustment that, I know I can't attest to this. I'm sure you can, as far as what the differences are in the professional setting. I suppose I saw it in college summer ball or something like this, but, is there anything as far as, I do want to touch on this with you in particular, because you've had plenty more experience with me or plenty more experience with this than I have, as far as how the routines progress, and especially in your time with the Mariners of, you've put several years behind you. Have you noticed the routines of others changing, or do you feel like for the most part it's always somewhat a resemblance of what it's always been? What are the routines of those that you see around you?
I think that as like I kind of mentioned earlier, as you get older, the routines turn into more of rituals. In college, everybody has this set of training or warm up that they need to do, and if they don't do it, then they don't feel like they can go out there and throw. Well, as you start to play more, your grace period of, hey, you need to go into the game right now, starts to get a lot shorter. There's not as much like, hey, you'll probably be in the fifth, right? If you get that, that's kind of a luxury, but as you move up, it starts to change. So people's routines turn into rituals, and that just comes from them, playing for a long time and it developing that way. Like, you think Jack Anderson one day just randomly thought like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna do Red Bull and Juicy Fruit. That's exactly what I need to do. No, that's his routine evolving into kind of more of a ritual, because that's what he can afford to do at any time, no matter the scenario, because he has it readily available. I would just like to know, honestly, how much money he spent on Red Bull and Juicy Fruit.
Because he's buying stock in it, of course.
Yeah, he comes every game with that and that. I mean, at the end of the year, what's that cost?
I mean, you never know. You're just ordering cases of it too. You're able to put that in your contract after a certain point.
Is it less than a set of plyo balls? Because if so, he might be onto something.
I mean, how much is a set of plyos? Like 70, 80?
Yeah, probably somewhere around there. I don't know. Depends on what you get. You get the Marv or the Tab.
That's true. With the Driveline ones, they added the pink too. They got a lot more going on with sizes. Goodness.
Oh yeah.
That's a good kind of premise to really follow. And I think about, I do actually want to disclose this. I pulled this out earlier. I feel like liable to disclose my involvement with sticky substances. Evan, I'm not going to drag you into this because you actually still have skin in the game. I'm not accusing anything there. But myself, I use this for 4 games. 4 games. I can tell you the 4 games that they were. I actually didn't pitch great in the 3 of them. All right, so this is kind of sad because this is the death of my baseball career, and I don't really find any joy in sharing this, but here we are. I was playing college summer ball. Shout out to the St. Cloud Rocks. Love y'all very much. This is my final 4 games of my my career altogether before I pretty much said I got to grow up here. It was the summer of 2020. I realized that I needed to throw. I'm going into games realizing I need to get picked up by a pro organization or I'm done. Like, this is just the sake of it's time. This is what we need to do. So hadn't had the interest yet, realizing I'm going into games thinking to myself, I need for the first 3 pitches to just throw this thing as hard as I can, try to light up the radar gun, hopefully a couple land, but this is what I need to do to get seen. And if this is working, I'll keep riding it out. If it isn't working, not a big deal. The other rationale of this is I need to say that I left 0 stones unturned. I gave myself the absolute best chance that I could, and this was before sticky substances were tested upon. So I do my research. I find this perfect. I had used it in pitch design sessions with Edgertronic cameras just because I wanted to see if I could exaggerate effects. But when I realized that these effects are being exaggerated, and I need to give myself an opportunity to say that I gave everything I could. A cross-checker was showing up to one of our games. I was set to pitch that day. I went to the store. I purchased this that same day, and I needed to do it. And my velocity was down about 3 or 4 miles an hour, and I couldn't find my slider. So
that's what I never liked about the sticky. I tried it once in 2020 before the whole hoopla went on.
Yeah.
And it's too sticky, man. It's like nothing I've never. It's like because you need that touch feel on the ball, and it was way too sticky for me to feel what was going on. And I remember my catch partner had it, and I put some on with him, and I was playing catch, and I was spraying the ball everywhere. Every single pitch, I was like sticking to my hand or like slip out because I was trying to hold it lighter or something to reduce the stick. And rosin, I use a ton of rosin, and rosin can get really sticky. I start putting rosin on in like the 4th inning so that my hands are really sticky by like the 7th or the 8th. Because if you put it on enough, you can stick a ball to your hand easy, especially with a lot of sweat. So the way I think about it is rosin is like ibuprofen, right? Or Advil or Aleve. Pelican is like morphine. Right?
You know, I want to feel something. Let's actually try this out.
So if
I can't even open it because it's shut.
So if you have a bum like a headache, are you just going to shoot up morphine? Probably not.
Do you think I could get the microphone to stick to my hands if I just did this?
I don't think you should. I don't think you should put that on because before you know it, we're not going to be able to finish the show because your hands be sticking to everything.
No, I just dabbed it in. That wasn't a whole lot. No, Evan, very upstanding. Hey, first of all, applause in order. Only using it for one catch session. Congratulations, man.
Yeah,
upstanding dude.
It was terrible. It was the worst. I understand why people couldn't throw without it once they took it away. Because once you get hooked on morphine, I'm assuming it's addictive.
I mean, and then all of a sudden you got to have a hard cut off as soon as it's banned. Yeah. No kidding. You know, I pulled this out of my bucket and then I was worried. It's like I grabbed it. Oh, well, let's see what this is. Oh, dear. I shouldn't have pulled this out. But no, I didn't want to rope you in, you being the active player. But no, I'm very pleased that you disclosed the actual honest truth that you were not one of the forbidden people like myself for 4 games. And it didn't work for me anyways. You know,
and I hated it. I didn't like it. So I never had like the, oh man, I was using that for like 2 years and now like I don't. It just I gotta get the feeling for everything back. Hell no. I don't want a routine or a ritual or nothing like that I absolutely need to perform. I want to go out there raw as it gets.
Yeah. You know, that's a good point. And I mean, like being very particular about your hands as a pitcher. Like, I mean, I'm sure you'll get callous just from lifting weights of a barbell and of course different pitches. We mentioned this on a previous episode. It was actually yesterday, as a matter of fact. Look at us rehashing back on this business. But like the particularity of your hands, and like me being a piano player too, not that I want to get into my own personal side of things, but I realized how much of a diva I turned into over just like tactical touch and feel. And that's why I didn't like taking pre-workout too. So,
yeah,
you know, I guess that's a really long form way of saying that you have to find what works for you, and even things that maybe this will theoretically work and make you a better pitcher, but if it doesn't make you comfortable, I think there's a completely different aspect of, in order for something to work wholeheartedly, you need to be vested into it to know that you're giving it a conscious decision to make it work. And a lot easier said than done. I'll be the first to raise my hand and say I've got challenges doing that myself, which I think is perfectly human and perfectly normal in many instances, but you never know. I mean, the other challenge about it is when you're just carting all this other stuff and you're realizing that, what am I doing this for? I could just be showing up admiring when the dudes were throwing better than me that just had like J-bands and a glove and cleats. Then I started really just searching in the mirror going, am I just doing this? I hope that people at least think I'm taking this super serious by carrying all my stuff around. But
well, they know.
You never know.
That's exactly what I would think if I saw that. I'm like, he is putting a lot of time and effort into what he's going, which is a good thing. You know, how you handle that's a different story, and you handled it pretty well. I mean, you were committed to that plan. So,
you know, I think it's funny too. I mean, you're always going to kind of second guess what it is that you take to perform. And there's a book that I recommend. I mean, anybody potentially reading. It's called The Mental ABCs of Pitching, and it's by Harvey Dorfman, a sports psychologist. I think this book was released, I believe, in like the 1980s. But I remember reading this when I was in high school. And again, being very routine driven, taking my phone out by the minute, setting timers, going and watching Clayton Kershaw's warm up and writing everything down at a big league park, which I can only help but wonder what somebody thought of me looking over a bullpen and taking notes of an actual player. That's kind of crazy in hindsight.
I would think that's pretty cool.
You know, I think about I mean, I look back on these situations and realizing how like I just perceived it was normal, and I never really looked at it from an outside standpoint until somebody was kind of clowning me about it, and I was going, I guess that isn't really normal. But I look in. I mean, I see the resources that exist now. Of it's so easy to get consumed into. I mean, you run a Google search and you can see this. You can find all sorts of video if you get your hands on the different databases that actually exist, and you can do it statistically to be able to put this together. But when you see the actual tangible meat and potatoes that goes into it, I took one wrist weight out. I can actually pick it up now. Just seeing the different layers that go into this and the complexities, so much of it, I can't believe how much it truly does depend on feel and just the recognition and the awareness of what do I need to do to feel like I'm at my best? Because if that doesn't exist, it's not exactly going to pan out the way that you want it to.
Yeah. Well, I think the moral of kind of what I'm gathering from this is, what does it take to create confidence?
Yeah.
It's different for everybody, so don't feel like you have to do something somebody else does. Because if you play for a long time, I guarantee you will see a whole bunch of things that is unique to that person for sure. So whatever it takes to make you feel like you need to be ready, or you're ready to go, then good. Do that.
We should have made that the headlining topic. What does it take to create confidence? Man, that was juicy. That was a lot more coherent than what's in your bag that we opened up with.
But that's how you get there.
That's true. That's a good point. You never know how it goes. Have you seen the people that bring like 3 pairs of spikes to the game and they'll change after they're done throwing because they don't like the feel of one of them?
Never seen that. Never seen
that. That was one of my favorite. The different aspects of... I've seen like a sketchbook in the bullpen before, just because they needed to draw. They needed to just get something out.
Yeah.
The creative minds. The snacks are good, though. I always like the food-related ones, and you never know how it could play out. But there we go, man. Well, I'm probably going to need to take about 40 minutes to pack up everything that I pulled out of my bag earlier. That's kind of par for the course. That's what I did. But, Evan, before I start turning into the furniture mover, you got any final thoughts for us?
That's it. Do what you need to create confidence. And trust me, it's usually less than more what you need. Usually less than
that's
more.
Good.
And if you can find,
I guess, the
handful of things that help you create confidence, you're going to be better off than, worrying about it all the time. I would say that you could go, the route of evidence and boil into it like Wick did, but that takes a really strong mind to be able to handle that and not be overwhelmed with all of the stuff that you have going on. I would applaud Wick for putting that level of commitment into his pre and post game routine, but I definitely would not say that's for everybody, right? Just like I would not say putting Icy Hot on your stuff is for everybody either.
On your stuff, there we go.
Way to keep it clean
right there. We haven't cussed yet on the program. I'm very proud of us, my friend. I will add on that as far as, say what works for you, and it does take a strong mind in order to do that. I will even kind of counter that and by saying even the strongest minds sometimes don't need that rigid structure to where you just kind of block yourself into a hole that you can't get out of. So I think that I look at this, and this is something that I wish that I looked at a little bit more of. I don't regret the way that I went about being prepared, but I do think about if I viewed it more as an adaptive reality as opposed to a very long list of checkboxes. I think that realizing that this is a fluid game, not only that, but you can treat the actual things within your control as a fluid game of, take it serious, make it a priority, recognize what it is for you, but, make this game what it is that you want it to be. And ultimately, when it gets time to when your career's over, you can say that you gave it everything you had right there. Keep riding the wave as much as you can. And then when your career is over, you just got a bunch of this other random baseball stuff. It makes good backdrops for in case you start a show, I suppose. So there we have it, man. So there we go. Evan, my friend, episode 3. We're all set. Thank you, my friend.
Yeah, I liked that one a lot.
I thought that went pretty good.
Yeah.
We usually save this commentary after we stop recording, but I'm glad that you threw that in the actual show.
Well, I'll leave you guys with this. Like I said last episode, I liked the episode. If you didn't, I don't care.
I'd be heartbroken if anybody didn't like this. I'd be sad. Oh goodness, we're playing good cop, bad cop at the end. All right, my friends, we're gonna run out of recording time. Actually, we probably aren't. I don't think we have anything. But there's nothing that drives me crazy more than new podcasts that don't know when to start and don't know when to finish. So we're just gonna cut this thing off. Thank you all very much. We're gonna be on any of these episodes, so it's not like you guys are going to be lost or confused. We'll definitely be around. You know where to find us. The Instagram presence is growing. The Twitter presence is growing. Fun to see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of maybe not familiar faces following us on the social channels. So keep sticking around. We're going to be clipping episodes. We're going to be putting some juicy business up on there. I almost said juicy fruit on there because that was the first thing that came to mind after talking about the gum. But nonetheless, no free ads. We'll have a good time with it. This has been episode 3 of The Night Pitch. He's Evan Johnson. I'm Justin Wick. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will see you next time.